I was at the lowest levels where I could perfect my craft and nobody knew. And when I say nobody, the masses didn't care and the masses didn't criticize. I feel like sometimes people want to get promoted above the sweet spot too soon that the comparison, the criticism breaks them. I spent so many years, 4 years at junior college, 2 years at D3, 7 years at NAI. So I understood that neither the criticism nor the praise, it was who I was.
Mm.
So
Yep.
when I arrived on a scene to where it's a national deal, and now people are saying, I don't fall privy to those things because I had all the reps in the backside of the desert.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
I had those reps. So I think we got to get the reps before you want the reputation.
Welcome to the School of Genius. My name is Tony Doble. I'm your host, and I'm so excited to have you with us. Here at the School of Genius, our goal is to empower people and equip people with the resources for them to walk in their purpose, to uncover their gifts so they can tap into their zone of genius. I believe everybody was created with unique gifts and talents that are unique to them, which allow them to see the world differently, which means they're allowed to solve problems that nobody else is able to see. And when we work in our zone of genius, nobody has to motivate us to do that thing because we're excited to do that thing. We're walking in our gifting. We're walking in that zone. Now, it takes some time to uncover our gifts, to discover what we are called to do. But when we get to walk in that zone, it brings us joy, it brings us satisfaction, and it's exciting for us. It means something to us. So as we prepare to launch our very first episode with Coach R-Jay Barsh, let me just say that I've listened to this podcast 5 or 6 times before being ready to share it with the world. The reason was that I wanted to record a full season before sharing the podcasts with the world. But while we were waiting, while we were scheduling, while we were busy managing life, I kept coming back to listen to this podcast, and it encouraged me so much. R-Jay speaks life into me. And my hope for you is that he speaks life into you and into your dreams and into your vision and into your goals. Are y'all done with Apple? Okay. And I just pray that you feel encouraged to go where you're feeling called to go, and that you find your Ferrari. Listen for that message from R-Jay. Find your Ferrari. Find your lane, your space where you're able to go faster than others because you're walking in your zone of genius. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy our very first episode of the School of Genius with Coach R-Jay Barsh. Do this. So R-Jay, thank you so much for being willing to be a part of this. So this podcast is called the School of Genius podcast. The reason it's called the School of Genius is because I believe that everybody has genius level talent. Everybody is genius in some form, in some capacity. But if you're not walking in your purpose and you're not using your gifts and talents and abilities in a way that excites you, then how can you lock in and tap into your genius, right? So that's what I kind of want to talk about today. And I want to talk about genius, but I want to back up a little bit because I believe that for believers, we are made in the image of a great God. And if we believe that, and we know that God is creative, God is inherently relational, right? God is all of these amazing things, and we are made in his image, and he's gifted us with talents and abilities. So why, I'm thinking, why aren't the most ambitious people on the planet believers? Right. What I shouldn't say that. What my question is, why aren't Christians the most ambitious people on the planet when you consider the fact that they are made in God's image? So that's what I kind of want to talk about today, but before we get into all the meat, I just want to say I'm thankful to have you on. It's good to see you. You know, we go way back. We go way, way back.
Way back.
And when I think of you, I think of the days when you were coaching and my office was across the street from where you were coaching. And I would go and I would meet you and we would do a little Bible study. And I remember you challenged me to read Jonah and think through why did Jonah do what he did and what did you think about that? And I thought, I don't know why he did what he did, but that's so interesting. I want to talk about it. But I was so encouraged by you that you just made talking about the Bible, talking about your faith so easy. So I think the
Mm.
deposits that you made in me then, the words of encouragement that you planted then are growing and showing dividends in my life now. So I just want to say thank you for everything you've done in my life, whether you knew it or not. So thank you.
My brother, thank you for being a pillar in our community. You've always stood with a sense of integrity and excellence. And so that was always the perception from every view of you. And so it was easy to talk to you because I knew where your perspective was coming from.
Wow.
And just now, like we said previously recording, I can see that glorious, ambitious, Christ-like glow in your life, and that not only comes from challenges from my brothers in the Word, uh, to live to a certain degree and a certain calling. That's part of it.
Thank you, man. That's amazing. Thank you. Um, for everybody that I need to edit this, I need to practice this. How do I do this? And I was thinking
This
about
might
this
be
all
this might
day.
be good. Like this is raw and uncut.
This is raw and
Coach
uncut.
Barsh from Spokane, Washington, in Spokane, Washington, assistant coach at Gonzaga basketball.
So you guys,
Da-da-da-da.
not only is R-Jay Barsh an amazing human, an amazing leader of men and athletes, he's a good dude, and I'm just so thankful that he's here with us. So R-Jay, would you mind just really quick before we get into the meat of everything, just tell everybody what you do? I mean, I know I have some insight into your world, but your path to do what you're doing now is amazing, like nothing short of amazing. And I just want to let everybody know, hey, look, this guy is not only walking the walk, but he is also getting opportunities that
Yeah.
others really just dream of.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing the same thing for it's my 19th year of coaching, 41 years on this earth, waking up and just listen to my heart, which sounds cliche, but say hello to everyone I see, eye contact, smile, thankful, gratitude. My heart's always been bent that way. And for whatever reason, God saw a purpose to put a basketball in my hand. And I've used basketball as a vehicle to get to people. And the generation we're in now is so led by people and connecting that skill set has allowed me to go from Division III to junior college to high school to Division II to NAIA to now at Gonzaga University. And so, which it's one of the top institutions in college basketball in America, simply because I know who I am. I stay within the confines of what God's gifted me to do. And I think that radiates energy into people and opportunities create themselves. And so it's like I feel so fortunate that I haven't been compelled to copy anyone. Because if I would have copied people, I don't think I'd be able to be in the seat I am today.
Wow.
So that's the story. That's 20 years of coaching. I got into coaching because I got hurt. The game was taken away from me. So it was a tough situation. That was like a destiny situation nonetheless.
So you felt like the gifts that you've always had as a communicator just created a new pathway for you to take the game of basketball, the game that you loved, pair it with your ability to communicate and connect with people in a big way, and then inspire and lead people with your gifts.
Yeah, 100%. I think the thing that I've learned is for some people, the higher level of competency in the area of your profession gives them trust. So I've learned to become extremely proficient in what I do. And then there's another framework of people that trust you based on how you love them and how you treat them. And so I naturally do that part. And so I was like, okay, let me make sure I'm doing everything correctly from a textbook standpoint so I can be spiritual and holistic, but at the same time be pragmatic in how I display things and be able to connect with all different types of people. That is, I think, the pivot for me is I didn't try to make everyone connect with me. I was like, let me try to find out how to connect to them. And when I was hurt, I realized in college how natural that was for me that wasn't natural for others. So then I realized, okay, then this is my Ferrari. This is I can go faster than others in this lane.
Wow.
And so I think even if I took the game of basketball out of it, whatever I would have chosen that moment, if it included people and a team, I believe I would have been successful. Basketball just has a lot of fun.
So for years, I've worked in the financial space, and I always said that finance was the vehicle, but I just wanted to show up and love and encourage people and let them know they could do whatever they want to do, that their dreams are worth it, that they're worth it. Like that's what I wanted to do. I just always said that finance gave me that platform. I would walk into rooms and people would want to talk about investing. They'd want to learn how to invest and save and increase their credit score. And I thought, okay, that was my proficiency,
Mhm.
like you said. But then I wanted to truly show up and be their advocate. Look, I couldn't always tell people I love them. I couldn't always tell them that I see value in you. But I mean, I couldn't say it that way. I don't think. But I always said finance is the vehicle for me to do what I think I'm called to
Mm.
do. That so the
Uh,
vehicle can change, but my
yes.
values and what I really feel like I'm called to do won't.
Yeah, that's how I always felt because the disciples all had some level of excellence outside of being a disciple before they were chosen.
Mm,
So they had displayed a level of discipline and integrity over a period of time that got Jesus' attention. So to me, I always feel like that's part of the process of faith, is that part. Your discipline creates excellence, and that should be displayed somewhere in your life. Not at all times. I know there's different seasons, but people should, there was a fruit that wasn't bearing fruit, and told it to go somewhere.
yep. Yep.
So our trees will bear fruit if we stay locked into our purpose.
That's good. That's good. So regarding purpose, and I want to talk about purpose, but I also want to maybe start with identity and then work into purpose. So going back to the earlier thought that I wanted and talk
Mhm.
through is for believers, and I've grown up in church. I didn't always have a relationship with Jesus, and I feel like once I did, once I realized how much he loved me, everything changed. It went from my mom's relationship with God to my own relationship with God, and that's when everything changed. It went from, okay, I mean, I know she reads the Bible and everything and she prays, but what is that? What is that? And it went from, okay, that's her church to, I really want to know this thing. I really feel like I'm called to do something, but if I don't know who's calling me, then I may not pick up the phone. So
Wow.
so if I'm made in the image of a great God, he loves me like crazy and he's creative and he's brilliant and he has plans for us, and as believers we know that. As believers we know there's nothing that we need to do to earn his love. There's nothing we need to
Mhm.
do to prove ourselves to him. We are already accepted. So if that's the foundation, then why does it seem so difficult to say that's my identity? There's nothing I can't do. Let's go. But why does it seem like were more timid and laid back and reserved, or maybe that's just my upbringing.
No, I think that's an overarching thing because the bridge from your mother's faith to your faith was probably failure and pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
for some reason, positive events don't leave scars. And
Mm,
so it doesn't cause us to go back and, figure out how this happened. But when I need faith and I need to pray, I don't get to borrow the prayers of my father. I gotta figure it out.
that's
And
good.
I think once you go through that, you find your identity in that. Also, on the identity piece, with how you're raised, you can't outbelieve the God that you understand. So if you understand God to just be this thing that you've been taught, that he's in the high in the sky, and one day, if then that when you pray, that God is close to you, but when you pray, he feels far. Until you accept that you're in God, that you're made in his identity, which means when you look in the mirror, you see God, then you realize that you're close to him and the world is trying to make you feel far from him. And when you do that, you can't escape your greatness. I think our society is built to make God seem so far away and that we have to do these things to get to him. And the problem with that is, a lot of places speak about hope, and hope's already came in the name of Jesus. So we don't need hope anymore.
Hmm.
And once you kind of like come to grips with that, it's it's easier to accept your failures and to stand tall in your successes and not become neither one of them.
So you have a chance to work with athletes, and that's what you've done for the last 20 years. When I was done playing basketball and I realized that I couldn't go any further, I had an identity crisis. Like, man, that's all I wanted to do. That's all I know. All the people that looked like me seemed like they were doing this thing.
Mhm.
I struggled with that for a long time. So, so how do you coach somebody or encourage somebody that is struggling with their identity because it might be tied to a profession, it might be tied to what they've pursued for so long. It might feel like they're really connected to that thing, and then outside of that, separate from that thing, separate from that career, separate from playing basketball, how do they look at who they really are?
Because I think the thing that I try to model for them and explain, not so much teach, is the gift is you, not what you do. And for some reason, we grow up with this notion that my calling is separate from my vocation, and that to be a big time believer, you have to be a pastor, you have to do
Mhm.
this, or you have to do that. And when you introduce yourself, you say, I'm a basketball player at, so your identity starts with what you do. And so one thing that I've always tried to do, I don't know where I got this from, was the work of my hands is always worship to the Lord. So even when I'm playing basketball, I'll let that be seen as worship.
That's good.
If the work of my hands is a NASCAR driver, when I grip this wheel, let it be seen as worship.
Yeah. Yeah.
If the work of my hand is finances, when I balance these budgets and I teach, let it be seen as worship. I think when we start to separate what we do from our identity and we're not acknowledging God gave me this gift, this is worship to him.
Mm.
Because all God wants us to do is to be joyful in who he made us. And if he made you 6'8", 220, and you can jump from the free throw line, it's okay to play basketball and have your identity in basketball if you know it's for his glory alone.
Mhm. Mhm.
So then when you put the ball down, your identity was in, that was a season of your identity, but not your identity.
Mhm.
Um, that's been the biggest thing for me. And like when I see guys graduate and they move on and they have the identity crisis, I said, no, this is a moment you're calling a crisis, but you've been in one the whole time. You've been in one the whole time because you knew that outside of who God called you to do, everything else that you do expires.
Yeah.
So that's the part I try to model. And I've been so fortunate to get opportunities that put me in front of these young men that they can't question. And they have to be like, man, I guess it's worked for him.
Mm.
You know, and wins and in losses.
You said the gift is you, not what you do.
I said that.
Is that the gift is you?
Write that down.
Not what you do.
Yeah, the reason I feel that way is because God gave his son, and we are his son. So, like, how can I not feel like the gift? I mean, like, that's like recognizing your Christ-like consciousness and DNA is I'm the gift. Let me unwrap myself to the world so they can see what this gift is. And it won't be accepted by everyone, but gifts are not supposed to be.
Right.
And that's the part I think sometimes we struggle. Our society props up certain gifts and makes them more coveted over others.
Yep.
And I think me and you probably see that a little bit because the gift articulation and communication is, oh, this guy's super gifted. And then someone who is a little maybe introverted and a little maybe more of a writer or quiet, they don't feel as appreciated because our culture does not acknowledge that as much. Neither God doesn't have a scale in heaven determining someone's gifts better than the others.
That's right.
He gave all gifts to men.
Yeah.
So, and women, you
Yeah.
know, so.
For sure.
Yeah.
Wow. I love thinking about the fact that God birthed us into existence because he wanted a relationship with us.
Mhm.
And he gave us gifts and abilities to use for his glory. Right? So if he gave me the ability to sing and I go sing, that's for his glory. Like we're doing what we're supposed to do, right? He wants a relationship with us. He wants us to love him and enjoy his creation. So if I'm using my basketball abilities and talents, or I'm singing or I'm doing something else, I'm doing, like you said, for his glory for sure, then I'm sure but if that's why he made us and we get to enjoy this thing, then we shouldn't feel shame for being good at something. We should use that thing. I think where I struggled was I had no idea there was anything outside of basketball that I wanted to do with my life. Like you were saying, sometimes we celebrate certain gifts and we overlook others. Well, I was, and probably to some degree still am, an introvert. I love people, but maybe a couple people at the house at a time is good. Get me in a big room, I might shy away to the corner. But I was reserved. I thought, well, if I'm reserved, I'm shy, I'm quiet, then what other gifts do I have?
I think it's if the sun tried to be the moon, we all have a problem tomorrow.
That's good. That's good.
So I think having a teacher, having somebody who puts you in a proper place to understand your functions of who you are. That's why parents are so vital. That's why community is so vital. That we allow young people to grow into their greatness before we create it for them. And so for us, there's churches on every other corner and then basketball courts between those churches. And then it was the streets. So you got three choices.
Yeah.
And so like when your perspective changes, you understand that there's way more choices. And then that's where you put your identity in those three things, because in most communities, every community has the things that they appreciate. And what you appreciate duplicates. And so it just goes generation to generation of things that we feel appreciated by.
Yeah.
And so that's why I love what you do. And I love that our community celebrates it, because there's a young man, a young lady who's probably going to listen and probably going to watch and be like, I can be an introvert and hold a podcast and hold space and be reserved. That's not modeled a lot.
Every single time I get up to speak in front of anybody, I get nervous. But it's because I really want to add value to people, and I love that. So whether it's 2 people or more, I'm just thankful that I get to go do those things. But no matter what, it
Can I add
doesn't
something right
define
there?
me. Right.
I think the nervous part is so important,
Mm.
because anything that I do that I'm not nervous about, I took 100% control of.
Mm. Wow.
So if I have 100% control, where does God work? So for me, the nervous tensions that I get at times are me reminding myself faith is needed here.
That's good.
It's okay. I'm good. I made the deposit spiritually. Let's go. And then I know in that space, I can't even try not to be authentic. It won't even happen. And then an hour later, I'm done. And I can't compare myself to anybody else. No one else can compare it, because the spirit makes room. But if I don't make room, like, you got to do your due diligence. But if I don't leave more control for God than myself, you don't want to eliminate that nervous tension. I think that's the beautiful part about playing basketball growing up, is no matter what, you always get a little nervous for a game, unless it's an opponent that you're going to beat by 50 because you beat them by 50 yesterday.
Yeah.
Then the only comparison is to yourself. But I think that nervousness part that you mentioned is overlooked at times. And sometimes people try to conquer that nervousness. Like, how can I get rid of being nervous? No. That's making room.
So how do you show up in your proficiency with discipline and passion, but at the same time leave space for what you want God to do?
I think I heard it say like this, work like it all depends on you, and then believe like it all depends on God. I think it's
Yeah.
someone
Yeah.
said it kind of like that. I also like to take, like, from proficiency level, lessons from my mentors. And so I'm huge on following the guidelines and the blueprints of others, and then knowing when I need to let it become my blueprint and let it become who God's called me to be.
Yeah.
But you want to work from a framework. You just don't want to show up on faith alone. I think sometimes we do that, and God still shows up in those things, but God uses man to promote us in some of the fields that we're in. And so you got to separate yourself with how you dedicate yourself to your craft, and then God will do the rest. And then also, like, if I would have stayed at the junior college level, I mean, all good. If that was all God.
Yeah.
I always tell myself, if what God has for me right now today was all God had for me, would that be enough? If my answer is yes, I'm at peace.
So that brings me into the concept of purpose. When I feel like someone has a chance to walk in their purpose, they are using their gifting, their perspective, their ability to problem solve, their ability to solve problems in ways that nobody else has ever solved them, because you see them differently. You have a different level of proficiency plus your perspective. How do you continue to walk within your purpose while getting better? Because I think about the story with the people in the Bible who had the talents, and I think that was related to money. But sometimes I like to think about that story as it pertains to our gifts and abilities, because I know that I know that I can grow and I can get better at the things that I'm already good and passionate about. But I know you can too. And just because you're a really good communicator and a really good leader, I know you're not stopping there. So how do you continue to work and steward what God has given you, but by getting better so you can make the impact that he's calling you to make.
It's so beautiful, that story, because like they got the talents and then one of them buried his talents, right? And the very thing that he buried the talents in is a thing that God breathed life into us from, the dirt. So like anything that we do, we should be bringing life to it. And how do you bring life into something? You got to breathe into it. So you have to be in that, not necessarily like in the moment in a meditative sense, but God is operating in the here and now. And the only way to be in the here and now is to have forgiven yourself for what you did yesterday without worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow, so you can live in the perspective of now and be in that. And the only way to do that is have spiritual disciplines that you walk through every single day. And yes, you can miss a day or two. It's not a 24-hour cycle. It's a conscious choice in your heart that I'm making a decision through this lens. And when you do that, you start seeing yourself different. You start, giving off emotions to others different. And I think that's how you continually perfect your craft, is because our world is caught in the tensions of yesterday and tomorrow. Spiritual people can be caught in today, to have one foot in the problem and another foot in the solution, and then dance with the two. I think that, to me, is where spiritual disciplines come into play. Give you in that moment.
Wow. I think we only have 5 more minutes left on this, on the time that I booked. So, R-Jay, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing some insights and your wisdom and some of your story with us. Last question. I know we just have a couple minutes. So I wanted to ask you, you've been promoted to so many different opportunities over the years, and it's amazing to see that, just at least from a distance. I can't even imagine what it's like to be in the middle of that, but it comes with growth and some intentionality. But I wanted to ask you really quick in the last couple minutes is, how has your identity changed, or does it change as you progress and you elevate, you work on you continue to take big steps of faith towards what God is calling you to do? Does your identity change? Because I've heard that we can't outdream the way we see ourselves. So if I see myself in this way, then it's really hard for me to outdream that current version of me. So how do you keep elevating regarding your identity?
I got a big problem.
Say it again.
I feel like I have a big problem. I feel like I'm in God. And I'm in joy. So I don't even have the capacity to dream where I can be, because my brain doesn't allow myself to dream where God could be. I can't even dream it. If like my biggest dream would be the cellar for what God has for me. So my identity is so lost in, like when you said a great God, I thought to myself, man, language in itself does such a poor job of explaining God. If there was a way to actually explain God, then we don't know God. So that's why I just try to know God.
Wow.
And then you look up and you're like, wow, here I am.
Such a cool approach to life, and what a great perspective. It feels like your faith is in him, which gives you some freedom to go wherever he's calling you to go, because it's less about you and more about what he wants you to do.
From a practical standpoint, in 10 seconds, I was at the lowest levels where I could perfect my craft and nobody knew. And when I say nobody, the masses didn't care and the masses didn't criticize. I feel like sometimes people want to get promoted above the sweet spot too soon that the comparison, the criticism breaks them. I spent so many years, 4 years at junior college, 2 years at D3, 7 years at NAI. So I understood that neither the criticism nor the praise, it was who I was.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
when I arrived on a scene to where it's a national deal, and now people are saying, I don't fall privy to those things because I had all the reps in the backside of the desert.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
I had those reps. So I think we got to get the reps before you want the reputation. You get the
Wow.
reputation from the reps. And then when God promotes you, you don't even feel the promotion. You're just on the way.
Hmm.
And you look up and your logos change and people pay more attention to you. But at the same time, if you start paying attention to those things, then you'll pay the price for becoming God to yourself.
Mm.
And that's where I dance a lot.
Got it. Well, that's big. That's big. R-Jay, thank you so much. Thank you. It's been an honor. Where can people find you?
Coach R-Jay Barsh, Barsh, on all social platforms. If you put that in Google and you can't find me, that means I went and hiding for a little bit just to be with God. But that's where you can find me. Or Gonzaga basketball. You'll see me on the sideline, jumping up and down, running and screaming, hugging and shouting. I always say, if you can see me on the sidelines, that's how I am on the front row at church. You don't know which one is which.
There you go. I love it. Thank you, man. I appreciate you so much.
Yes, sir.
We'll talk soon.